So last time we covered the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, which was a treaty between the pagan Quraysh and the Muslims. When the Muslims, they wanted to perform an Umrah, but the pagan Quraysh, they refused. But then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then stayed at the plain of Hudaibiyyah. And then there was a back and forth between the delegations that were sent by Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and also the Quraysh. But then afterwards, after the Baytul Ridwan, the Quraysh sent a delegation under Suhail bin Amr, and they were able to conclude the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, which temporarily put an end to the conflict between the Muslims and the Quraysh. Now, after the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, now the main target, the main threat to the Muslims were the Jews in the Khaybar, right? Because the Jews in the Khaybar were the ones who had financed the Battle of Khandaq, and they had financed the Quraysh and the Ghatafan to attack the Muslims, and they gathered 10,000 people and they surrounded Medina, but they were unsuccessful. Okay, so the threat was still there because the Jews still resided in Khaybar, and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam up until yet had not retaliated against them. Okay, so now after the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had his consultation on the Jews of Khaybar, and just immediately afterwards, about a month after the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, in Muharram of the 7th year of Hijrah, so then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then gathered the Sahaba, about 1,700 of them, and he told them that he is going to Khaybar to attack the Jews, right? So the Jews, when they were expelled from Medina, as we have done in the previous sessions as well, that Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nazir were expelled from Medina, and they settled in a place called Khaybar. Okay? And the Khaybar was towards the north of Medina, as you can see on the map as well. And Khaybar had a lot of date palms. It was lush green, and it was very well irrigated, right? So therefore, the Jews at that time, they were very good farmers, and they grew a lot of dates in this particular area. So then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went to Khaybar with 1,700 men, and he took the Jews by surprise. They were expecting an attack, but they didn't know when an attack would come. Okay, and it is in the Hadith that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he attacked with 1,700 men, then the Jews, it was during morning time. So the Jews, they were coming out with their axes and with their farming equipment. And when they saw the Muslims coming, then they rushed into their fortresses and they locked themselves in the fortresses. Okay. Now, the Muslims, they decided to conquer each fort one by one, right? As we discussed in the previous sessions as well, that the Jews were very good at building fortresses. Those fortresses were there to protect them from any external enemy. And these fortresses were also built in Khaybar as well. So there were about 10 to 15 of them. And the Muslims decided to conquer each fortress one by one. Okay. Now, Muslims are conquering the fortresses. And then what happened was that this, because the fortress at that time had names as well. So this particular fortress by the name of Na'im. And this was the largest fortress which the Jews had. And it was very particularly difficult for the Muslims to conquer. So Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then sent Abu Bakr, and then Abu Bakr fought. But then at the hands of Abu Bakr, this conquest did not take place. So then after 10 days, then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that tomorrow I'll give the flag to somebody who will be given victory by Allah and who loves Allah and his apostle and is loved by Allah and his apostle. Right? So then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that tomorrow I'm going to give this flag to someone who's going to give us victory. Then the next day, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked for Ali radhiyallahu anhu, and Ali radhiyallahu anhu, the Sahabas said that he's in a tent because he's unwell, his eyes are unwell. Then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked Ali to come, and then when Ali came, then he rubbed his saliva on the eyes of Ali radhiyallahu anhu, and it cured, and it healed. The saliva cured the disease that was in the eyes of Ali radhiyallahu anhu, and it became as good as the eye became healthy, and then Ali radhiyallahu anhu was able to lead the Muslims. Now, as he was going with the flag, as he was going towards Khaybar, towards this particular fortress called Na'im. Then he asked Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it is there in the Hadith as well, so should I fight them till they become like us, that is Muslim? Right? And then Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, go to them patiently and calmly till you enter the land. Then invite them to Islam and inform them what is enjoined upon them. For by Allah, if Allah gives guidance to somebody through you, it is better for you than possessing red camels. Okay? So from this particular Hadith, we see what was the hikmah, what was the wisdom of fighting against the tribes in Arabia, different tribes, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Arabic tribes. So the wisdom of fighting against them was to spread the message of Islam amongst them. Okay? and the primary goal of the Muslims was to spread the message and not to attack or invade their lands, right? So therefore Muhammad expressed this here as well. He said that invite them to Islam, and if they accept, if one of them accepts, it is better than any of the war booty that you are going to get. Okay. Now after that, then we all know the story that Ali Radhiyallahu anhu, he fought a particular person by the name of Mihrab, right? And this person came from the fortress Naim, and he challenged the Muslims, and one of the Ansar was killed in that challenge. And then secondly, then Ali Radhiyallahu anhu went and he killed that Jewish champion. Okay. And then after the Jewish champion was killed, then the Jews who were already running out of the supplies in the fortress, they came out and they went on an all-out attack, right? So the Jews that were living in this fortress, Naim, they went on an all-out attack. And then Ali Radhiyallahu anhu and the Muslims fought them, and the fight was ferocious. And we know the famous story that Ali Radhiyallahu anhu, his shield was knocked off from him. And then what he did was that he held onto the door of the fortress, and then he used it as a shield. And then afterwards, when the battle was over, then when the Sahaba went and they started picking up the door, 7 of them could not lift it. It was so heavy, right? So this was a blessing from Allah for Ali Radhiyallahu anhu, that he was able to lift something that heavy and defend himself with it, right? And then when after 10 days the Muslims were able to conquer Al-Naim, then they went to another fortress by the name of Al-Saq. And what happened was that they laid a siege to it, and they were able to conquer it in 3 days. And then afterwards, the Muslims were running out of food and water, right? And this Asab, this particular fortress, had a lot of food and water. So when the Muslims conquered it, they were able to replenish themselves. Okay. Now, after that, another major fortress that the Muslims laid siege to was the Qilatu Zubair, or the castle of Zubair. Okay. And in this castle, what happened was that this castle did not had any internal water supply; it only had an external water supply. So what the Muslims did was that they cut off the water supply, and then when they cut off the water supply, of course, the men of the Jews had to come out and fight, and that is what they did. After 3 days, they came out and fight, and they were defeated, and the Qilatu Zubair was also conquered. Then finally, afterwards, the final 2 fortresses that were left were Al-Wati and As-Sulalim. And these fortresses were besieged for 10 days and for 10 nights, and then on the 11th day, they surrendered. Right? And when the Jews surrendered, then Muhammad initially had an idea of expelling the Jews from Khaybar altogether. So then the Jews negotiated with him, and they said that we are good at plantation, you guys are not good at plantation, so what we can do is that we will plant and we'll give some of the produce to you. Okay. So then Muhammad agreed with them on these terms, that 50% of the produce to be given to the Muslims. Okay. So whatever the Jews are going to produce per year, 50% has to be given to the Muslims. And the maintenance and labor has to be done by the Jews. And then in order to prevent the Jews from financing any future expeditions against the Muslims, they had to hand over all the gold, silver, and weapons and armor to the Muslims. Okay, this was a term of the surrender. And then finally, the final term was that if the Muslims decide to expel them, right, and they could expel them anytime. Okay, so the Muslims can cancel the treaty anytime and could expel the Jews. So this treaty was agreed between the Muslims and the Jews, and as a result, the Muslims received a very large war booty in this particular battle. Okay. And there are a few incidents that are related to this battle, and one is a famous incident which is related to suicide. So from this incident, we derive that suicide is forbidden in Islam in any circumstances. So what happened was that there was a Bedouin Arab who accepted Islam, and then he was fighting ferociously, and Muhammad said that he is a dweller of hellfire. Then the Sahaba were flabbergasted. How is he a dweller of hellfire when he's fighting for the Muslims against them? Very well, right? So then they followed him. What happened was that he was cut, and then he could not tolerate it. So he took an arrow from his package. He took an arrow and he killed himself. Okay, and then the Sahaba understood. Okay, this is why Muhammad said that he's an inmate of hellfire. Okay. And afterwards, what happened was that when the Jews surrendered and the Muslims agreed with the treaty, not with the treaty, but the terms of surrender, then the Jews prepared, as was the custom of that time, that whenever there was a conquest, right after the conquest, the conquered people used to prepare some food for the conquerors, right? So similarly, the Jews, they prepared some lavish food for the Muslims, especially for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, And that food, so this one particular lady, she asked which part of the meat is favorite of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So then she was told that it is the shoulder blade of a lamb. So that is what she prepared. She prepared the shoulder blade of the lamb, and she dipped it in a lot of poison in order to poison Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then what happened was, when this particular food item was brought to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he just put it in his mouth, and then he asked the Sahaba to stop eating. Okay, the Sahaba had already taken it in their mouths. He told them to just vomit it out of the mouth, and the Sahaba vomited it out, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also vomited it out. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the meat itself has told me that it has been poisoned. Okay, and then afterwards there was one particular Sahaba by the name of one particular Sahaba, sorry, not Sahaba, one particular Sahabi who was who basically ingested it. Okay, ingested it. Others, they vomited it out, but one ingested it. Okay, and what happened was, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam got to know that this particular lamb has been poisoned, then he asked, who has poisoned this, who has prepared this, and who has poisoned this. So this lady was brought to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam initially forgave her. But then when that Sahabi by the name of Bishr, if I'm not mistaken, I think this name of the Sahabi, okay, is it? Okay. Last two words. Oh, Bishr, yeah, by the name of Bishr. So thank you. By the name of Bishr. So what happened? He died because he ingested it, the poison. So then that lady was killed. And during the last days of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that, oh Aisha, when he was feeling the pain, he said, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta has been cut from that poison. So this was such a deadly poison that was given. And another incident that took place before the Battle of Khaybar, which I did not go through, was the marriage of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Habiba. Okay, and Habiba was the daughter of Abu Sufyan, and she was married to a person by the name of Ubaydullah bin Jahash. Anyone remembers Ubaydullah bin Jahash? First episode, first lecture. So Ubaydullah bin Jahash of Arabia. So they were the ones who rejected idolatry, and they were monotheists, right? So Ubaydullah was one of them. The other was Waraka, who accepted Christianity. And then the third one was Zayd bin Amr, who was the father of Sa'id bin Zayd, who is one of the 10 promised Jannah. So Zayd bin Amr was the third one, and the fourth one was Usman bin al-Huwayrith, who went to the Roman Empire and he became a Christian. Okay, so Arabia, Hanif of Hijaz, and they rejected idolatry. And what happened was, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with his message, he accepted Islam. He migrated to Abyssinia, and he was married to Habiba, Habiba. Okay, and they both of them were married. So what happened was, in Abyssinia, when he encountered Christianity again, because before accepting Islam, Ubaydullah had accepted Christianity. Okay. So then he accepted Islam. He went to Abyssinia, and then in Abyssinia he accepted Christianity again. So he became a murtad. And just a few years after that, he died because he was very old. So this Hanif that we were talking about in the first lecture, they met each other even before the birth of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that was a long time ago. So he was an elderly man. So he died. So now Habiba, who was a Muslim, then she was also the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he got to know that her husband has died, so he sent a proposal to the daughter of Abu Sufyan, and that proposal was accepted by Habiba. And then Najashi, we will discuss about Najashi in the next slide as well. Then Najashi was the king of Abyssinia at that time, and he had accepted Islam as well. So he became extremely happy. And then he became the wali of Habiba, and he also gave a lot of gifts. And Mahar was also given by Najashi on behalf of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a lot of gifts were given to Habiba by Najashi on behalf of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So now the Battle of Khaybar, the poison, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been poisoned. Yes, sorry. Oh. Now, in the Battle of Khaybar, it was the first time that war booty was divided based on animal, right? Based on cavalry and infantry. Right? So infantry and cavalry are the ones who are on animals, on horsebacks, and they strike on horseback, whereas infantry are the ones who are standing, and they're standing soldiers basically. Right? So the cavalry was given 3 times the share of infantry because they had to take care of the horse as well. So the 2 shares were for the horse and 1 share for the person, whereas infantry was given 1 share. So this war booty was divided in this way, and that continued throughout throughout the Islamic Caliphate after Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as well. Okay. Now, as it is mentioned in the Quran, the promise of Allah that the ones who participated in Hudaybiyyah are going to get a larger reward from Allah, right? So therefore, the ones who participated in Sulh Hudaybiyyah, they were given a large share of our booty. Okay, so they got a lot of money from that because Khaybar was a very rich area. So the Muslims got a lot of more booty from this particular expedition. And then in this expedition, the Ansar, they had granted a few of the lands to Muhajirun so that they can cultivate on them, live on them. So then these lands were then returned to the Ansar by the Muhajirun because now they have got their wealth, so they can buy their own lands from the wealth that they got from Khaybar. And this particular hadith is very symbolic of what was happening in Medina at that time. So Ibn Umar said that we did not eat our fill until we conquered Khaybar. Okay, so before that we had never eaten to our fill. We were always hungry, but it was up until Khaybar we had not eaten till our fill. But it was the conquest of Khaybar which brought wealth to us, and therefore we were able to eat until we were full. Okay, and then finally the last major incident that happened was the marriage of Muhammad to Safiya bint Huyay. Okay, so in the previous slide I had mentioned as well, maybe I forgot to reiterate it, but in the previous session as well I had mentioned that Huyay bin Akhtab was one of the leaders of the Jews. Okay, one of the leaders of the Jews, and he was executed when Banu Qurayza were executed. Okay, so he was from Banu Nazir, so he went all the way. He tried to convince Banu Qurayza to join, and he was there when Banu Qurayza were besieged, so therefore he was executed there. And then another one was Abu Salama bin al-Bukhayr, right? So he was also executed. We did last time that Abdullah bin Atiq was sent to execute him. And then the third one was Kinana, by the name of Kinana, another leader of the Jews. And this Kinana was married to Safiya bint Huyay. Right? Safiya bint Huyay was the daughter of Huyay bin Akhtab. One of the leaders was Huyay bin Akhtab. He was executed during the time of Banu Qurayza. And Kinana was another leader who was married to Safiya. Okay. Now Kinana was also killed during the Battle of Khaybar. So now after the Battle of Khaybar, then Safiya is given to a Sahabi by the name of Dahiyya al-Kalbi. Okay, Dahiyya receives Safiya bint Huyay, but then the Sahaba, they tell Muhammad to take Safiya because she's the daughter of the chief of the Jews. So therefore Muhammad should take her because that will be because the daughter of the chieftain should go to Muhammad, right? So that was their logic. So Muhammad understood it and he decided to take her, and he paid the price to the Sahabi, right? So he paid the price and he took Safiya. Now after he took Safiya, then of course Safiya, her father was also killed by the Muslims, and her husband was also killed by the Muslims, and a lot of her relatives were also killed by the Muslims, right? So then Muhammad then decided to test her iman, whether she is really a Muslim or not. Because she professed Islam, but she did not profess Islam at that time, but Muhammad decided to test whether she is not Muslim, but whether she is trustworthy or not. Okay, so then Muhammad went and said that your father has been a staunch enemy to me. Okay. Then Safiya said that yeah, he has been he was an enemy, but then the Quran says that no soul shall bear the burden of another soul, right? So if my father was in the wrong, then that does not mean that I am in the wrong as well. Then Muhammad was impressed by the answer. Then Muhammad then said that if you accept Islam, I shall keep you for me. Okay, and if you remain in your faith, then perhaps I'll free you and you can return to your people, right? Very straightforward offer. If you are going to accept Islam, I'll keep you. If you are going to remain on the Jewish faith, then you can return to your people and you will be free, right? So this is another way of testing her, because now Muhammad because she is thinking that she's a bondswoman, right? She's a slave. That is what she's thinking. So when Muhammad said that I shall keep you for me, so in her mind she will be a slave if she will be with Muhammad, and if she accepts Islam and be with Muhammad, she will be a slave. But if she remains Jewish, then she will be freed from the slavery, and then she can go back to her own people. Okay. So then, amazingly, she said that no, she's going to accept Islam and she's going to stay with Muhammad. So then Muhammad then freed her, and the mahar of Muhammad was her mahar was the freedom, and then Muhammad then married Safiya bint Huyay. Okay, and Safiya then later narrated a lot of incidents that happened when she was young, and one of the incident was that her father, Huyay bin Akhtab, and her uncle. Okay, and her uncle, the name of her uncle was Abu Yasir. Then they came one day when Muhammad came to Medina. Initially, they came and then they were talking amongst themselves. They were very depressed. So then she overheard, and they were talking. They were saying that they were asking each other whether he's the one. Is he the prophet that is being predicted in our scriptures? And the other one, Abu Yasir, said that yeah, he's the one who's predicted in our scriptures. Then Wave said, then what should we do about it? And Abu Yasir said that we are going to oppose him. As long as I'm alive, I'll oppose him. Okay, because he's not from the Jewish tribe, he's not from us. So as long as he's going to be here, I'll oppose him. Okay. So this was the attitude that the Jews had towards Muhammad, because he was not from the Jews, and they were expecting a prophet, a Messiah from amongst the Jews, and he was not a Jew, he was an Arab. So that even though they recognized that he was a prophet and he was the one who was being predicted, he was the one who was predicted in the scriptures, but they did not accept him, and they opposed him, and they waged war against him because he was an Arab and he was not a Jew. Okay. Now later on in her life, then Safiya, the other wives of Muhammad used to sometimes they taunted Safiya because of her background. She had a Jewish background. So one such incident happened when Hafsa, who was the daughter of Umar, she said something to Safiya. She said that you are the daughter of Yehudi, right? You are the daughter of a Jew. And Safiya was hurt. And then when she went to Muhammad and she said that this is what Hafsa said to me. And then Muhammad said, okay, you should have said to her that your father was a prophet and your uncle was a prophet. So father means the ancestor is Harun or Aaron, and your uncle was also a prophet, Musa was also a prophet, and you are married to a prophet. Okay, so what do they have over you? So when the other wives of Muhammad they taunted her lineage, then Muhammad taught her the perfect reply. Okay. And then there were other incidences as well later on when Zainab bint Jahash, for example, once she also taunted Safiya, and Muhammad was very angry with her, and Muhammad then expressed his disapproval of what Zainab bint Jahash did. Okay. And then later they reconciled, of course. And later as well, when Muhammad was dying as well, was in his final days. Then also there was one incident that happened, an incident of taunt, when other wives taunted Safiya. Then Muhammad again sided with Safiya against the other wives, right? So therefore, this is a perfect reply to those people who say that Islam is anti-Semitic, because Muhammad is defending the lineage of the Jews and defending her own sister who had a Jewish lineage, not sister, her own wife, sorry, who had a Jewish lineage. Okay. Now, yep.
Also ask questions.
Yeah. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Second point. Yeah. People who participated in Hudaibiyyah were given extra share. This point. So what happened was that when the war was over, the Muslims agreed terms and conditions of surrender. And the Jews had to give their wealth to the Muslims, a lot of wealth to the Muslims. So now that wealth has to be distributed amongst the fighters, amongst the people, amongst the Muslims. So then the ones who participated in the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, which was about a few months before the Battle of Khaybar, they were given extra shares because Allah has promised them extra shares, right? So they were given a lot of war booty because they participated in Hudaibiyyah, okay? And Allah has promised them in the Quran that they are going to get a lot of reward for this one, okay? Now, during that time as well, after the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, now the peace has been established with the Quraysh, and Muhammad can focus on other tribes within Arabia and also outside Arabia. So Muhammad then decides to write the letters to various rulers. And the first letter that he writes is to Najashi, the king of Abyssinia. And Muslims were living in Abyssinia, as we discussed in I think episode 4 or 5, the lecture number 4 or 5, that the Muslims, they went to Abyssinia when they were being persecuted by the pagans in Makkah. Okay, so they migrated to Abyssinia, and the leader was Jafar. And in Abyssinia, the king was Najashi, and he had heard the message of Islam through Jafar. But there is a controversy on when he accepted Islam, whether he accepted Islam there or whether he accepted Islam in this particular incident, and when he read this particular letter. So there's a controversy, but yeah, I'm just mentioning it because it is written in the books of Seerah that Muhammad also sent the letter to Najashi. Okay, at this time. So when Najashi he saw the letter of Muhammad and the letter said that gave him glad tidings if he accepted Islam. So Najashi then accepted Islam and he became a Muslim. And then 2.5 years later, when he died in the 9th year of Hijrah, then Muhammad prayed namaz janazah, right? The ghaibana namaz janazah, right? So he was not present, but Muhammad prayed a namaz janazah. Okay. And then when Muhammad sent an emissary to Najashi, he also asked Jafar and about 50 of the Muslims who were there with Jafar to come back to Medina. Okay. And then Jafar then returned to Medina. And he's going to play a prominent role in the later battle that we're going to discuss, the Battle of Mu'tah. Okay. Now Jafar, along with the Muslims that were settled in Abyssinia, they returned to Medina. Okay. Now Najashi had accepted Islam, so this was the most successful letter. And then afterwards, he also sent a letter to a person called, his title was Maqawqas, and his name was Jurej ibn Mina. Okay, so Jurej, probably an Arabic version of George. Okay. So Jurej ibn Mina, and this Maqawqas was from Egypt. Okay, so he was, let me show you the map of the world at that time. Okay, so if you can see the map of the world here, so now this is Egypt, okay, and this is under the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire as it is called right now. Right? So back in the days, they used to call themselves Romans. So Byzantine is a later terminology by modern historians. Okay. And you had the Persian Empire here in Iran and Iraq, and you had the Roman Empire, and Egypt was under the Roman Empire. Okay, and they had their governors in the Roman Empire, and one of the governor was by the name of Maqawqas. Okay, and his name is mentioned in the Seerah as Jurej bin Mina. And if we go to the sources which are non-Muslim sources, so we can say, I mean, we do not find anyone by the name of Jurej or George, but we do find someone by the name of Cyrus of Alexandria. Okay, and it is probable this Jurej bin Mina was Cyrus of Alexandria. Okay, and so when the Muslim emissary was sent to Cyrus, then he did not accept Islam, but he sent gifts to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and one of the gift was Maria and Serene. Right, so these were the two sisters who were gifted to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then Maria Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam kept for himself, and then Serene was gifted to another Sahabi by the name of Hassan bin Sabit. Okay, and this particular person, Jurej ibn Mina or Maqawqas, so if he is Cyrus of Alexandria, then Cyrus of Alexandria, another tidbit of history. So Cyrus of Alexandria had a different theology than the people who used to live in Egypt, right? So Egyptians were Coptic Christians, and Cyrus of Alexandria had a different theology, right? So he tried to reinforce his theology onto Egyptian people, which the Egyptian people rejected. Okay, so for 10 years he persecuted the Egyptian people brutally because he wanted to impose his own theology onto the Egyptian people. Okay, and then when the Muslims came and they conquered Egypt under Amr bin As, so then Egypt was very easy to conquer, right? So about 7,000 people went to Egypt and they conquered entire Egypt, whereas Egypt was the most prosperous province of the Byzantine Empire. Okay, so imagine the most prosperous province of the Byzantine Empire, which is returning them the most wealth and the most agriculture as well, and that has been conquered by 7,000 people. Okay, so the most plausible theory is that the people of Egypt supported the Muslims because they so much hated the rule of the Byzantines because of this person Cyrus, and also because of the previous rulers as well. But this person Cyrus was the one who persecuted them for 10 years. Okay. Now after Jurej, the letter was sent to the ruler of the Roman Empire, the ruler of the Byzantine Empire that he was seeing, the ruler himself, and his name was Heraclius. Okay, and Heraclius, Muhammad sent the Sahabi Dihya al-Qalbi to the city of Bosra in Syria, in present-day Syria. No, it is the city of Bosra was in Syria, right? So the entire Levant strip was called Syria. Right now it is divided into different countries: Syria and Jordan and Lebanon, Palestine. Okay, but all of this was called Syria at that time. Okay, so this Bosra was at the border of Arabia and Syria, and Dihya was sent there, and this letter was sent to the governor of Bosra, and then the governor of Bosra passed it to Heraclius, who was there in Jerusalem. Okay, Jerusalem was also under the Roman Empire. Okay. So if you can see here, Jerusalem is right here, and it is under the Roman Empire as well at that time. Okay, it's soon going to come under the Muslims, but at that time it is under the Roman Empire under Heraclius. Okay. Now Heraclius, his story is the most detailed in Bukhari. It is there in Bukhari. It is, I think, the 7th hadith of Bukhari is regarding Heraclius. The entire hadith, it's about 2 pages. So then what happened was, at that time, Abu Sufyan was also there. Bosra. He was there for his normal trade that the Arabs used to do. Okay, so what happened when Heraclius, he looked at the letter, then he asked if there's anyone from amongst the Arabs who know this person who has wrote the letter, and if I can get them, right? So therefore, I mean, if there's anyone, then just bring them to me. So then the Romans, they asked around and they found that that Abu Sufyan is from that particular city from which Muhammad is from, right? So Abu Sufyan is then brought to the place where Heraclius is in Jerusalem, and then Abu Sufyan. What happened is that Heraclius brings tells Abu Sufyan to come and sit in front of him. Okay, not in front of him, but just not sit, but stand just away from his other people, right? So the other Arabs, they're at the back, and Abu Sufyan is isolated in the front. And then Heraclius said that if anything he says is wrong, just signal it to me and I'll execute him. Okay, so Abu Sufyan is just right there, isolated, and his other Arab companions are on the back, and they are not with him, and therefore Heraclius has threatened to execute him if he tells lies about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Heraclius asked a few questions. All of them are in the Hadith of Bukhari. So then he asked that what is the family status of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Okay, so then Abu Sufyan replies that he's from a noble family. And then Heraclius asked, has anybody amongst you ever claimed the same right before him? Has anyone claimed prophethood? So then Abu Sufyan says that no, we don't even know what prophet is. Okay, we didn't even know before that who prophet was. Then are his followers increasing or decreasing day by day? Okay, so this is what Heraclius asked. Then Abu Sufyan said that his followers are increasing day by day. Okay. Was anybody amongst his ancestors? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so was anybody amongst his ancestors a king? Okay. Then Abu Sufyan replied no. Then Heraclius asked, do the nobles or the poor follow him? Then Abu Sufyan said, the poor people follow him, not the nobles. Then he asked, are his followers increasing? Then Abu Sufyan said, yes, they are increasing. Then he asked, does anybody amongst you has embraced his religion, become displeased, and renounced the religion afterwards? Then Abu Sufyan said, no, nobody has renounced his religion. As to my knowledge, nobody has renounced his religion. Then he asked, have you ever accused him of telling lies before his claim to be a prophet? Abu Sufyan said, no, he was known as Sadiq and Amin. He did not used to lie. Then he asked, does he break his promises? Abu Sufyan replies that he does not break his promises. And then he asked, have you had war with him and what happened during the war? So he said that yes, we had war with him, but then he won sometimes and we won sometimes. And then finally he asked, what does he order you to do? Then Abu Sufyan replies that he orders us to worship one God and to be good to our kin. Okay, good to our neighbors and to our kith and kin. Okay. So then Heraclius said, okay, I asked you the first question, that what is his family status amongst you? Because the prophets are from the noble lineage, right? So therefore, this check was done. Okay, and then this was checked from the list. Now he asked the second question: has anyone else claimed to be the same? Because he wanted to make sure that he's not a false prophet, right? So as we know that after Muhammad died, then there were many false prophets, right? So they were trying to claim the glory. Right? So therefore, he wanted to make sure that the knowledge of prophethood, if there is knowledge of prophethood amongst the Arabs or not. Right? Now he asked the third question: was anybody amongst his ancestors a king? Because if there was anyone from amongst his ancestors who was a king, then it can be assumed that Muhammad is claiming to be a prophet in order to take the kingdom back. Okay, but there was no king, so therefore this is checked as well. Okay, and then he asked the fourth question: do the nobles or the poor follow him? And then the reply was the poor follow him. And that was, then Heraclius said that this is exactly what happens to the prophets. The nobles do not follow him, and the poor people follow him. Okay, and then Heraclius said that the prophets, their followers, they increase day by day, and this is also checked. And he also said that when the truth comes, right, the people accept it and then do not renounce it, and therefore this is also checked. And then he said that the prophets, they never lie and they do not break their promises, right? So all the checklist that he had for the prophets, that Muhammad is fulfilling all of them. Okay. Now finally he said that if it is the case as what you say, then he is going to be on the very land that I'm on. Okay, so he knew that a prophet is going to come and he's going to conquer Syria. Okay, and it was in his scriptures, and he was a very knowledgeable king. Okay, and then yeah, it's not there in the modern day Bible, but then maybe back in the days. Yeah, back in the days, maybe he had access to a scripture in which this particular information was there. Then he also said that I expected a prophet. I was expecting a prophet, but I never thought that it's going to be from amongst you people. I thought it's going to be from amongst the Jews. Okay. Now he's treated the emissaries of the Muslims, the representatives of the Muslims well, and therefore Muhammad said later that his kingdom is going to survive for some time. Okay, and the Muslims, they conquered the Persian Empire, as we know, and they conquered a lot of Roman Empire as well. But all of the Roman Empire was not conquered. Okay, so all of the Roman Empire was finished by the Muslims when? Any idea? When was the Roman Empire finally defeated by the Muslims? Huh? Sorry?
I have a message on Zoom.
Really? Did Najashi become Muslim in the end? Yes, Najashi became Muslim and he died as a Muslim. And Muhammad prayed namaz janaza on him. Okay. So
can you give us like a hint? So where are we right
now?
now?
Let's discuss this later. Okay. So then, yeah, Heraclius then opened the letter, read the letter, and the letter said that Muhammad invited him to Islam, and then he said that if you're not going to accept, so this is a veiled threat now. If you're not going to accept Islam, then your people, their sin is going to be on you. Okay, so you are responsible for your people, and therefore you should accept Islam. Okay. And then he quoted the verse of the Quran as well. And people of the scripture, come to a word common to you and us, that we worship none but God. Okay, and that we associate nothing in worship with him, and that none of us shall take others as lords beside God. Then if they turn away, say, bear witness that we are Muslims. Okay, so now Allah has advised Muhammad to come to common terms with the people of the book, and Muhammad quoted this particular verse in the letter that he wrote to Heraclius as well. Okay. Now, after Heraclius, he also wrote a letter to the Persian king. Okay, so the two superpowers are the, yeah.
You said Arisian will be committing a sin of Arisian.
Yeah, Arisian is his people, so you will be committing the sin of his people. Okay, and then he also sent a letter to Khusro Pervez. Okay, so his name, he was the king of Persia. He was a very lavish king. He used to believe that he's God on earth. Okay, Khusro Pervez. And when the letter was sent to Khusro Pervez, he read the letter and he was furious that the name of Muhammad was above his name. Okay, so he just tore the letter and he said, "Who is this person? Bring him to me." Okay, so he had his people in Yemen, okay, and he had his the rulers in Yemen were he had control over them. So what he did was that he asked one of the persons in Yemen by the name of Bazan. Okay, he asked him to go to Medina and to bring Muhammad to him. Okay, and then Bazan then sent two emissaries to Medina in order to spy on Muhammad. Okay, but then Muhammad knew that they were spies. So when they came to Medina, then Muhammad said to them that, okay, go back to your Rabb, which is Bazan, and tell Bazan that his Rabb, which is Khusro, has been killed by my Rabb. Okay, which is Allah, and now his son, which means Khusro's son, is now the king instead of him. Okay, and this is what exactly happened, and this we can verify from the non-Muslim. All of this can be verified from the non-Muslim sources as well, right? So this particular notion that the Muslim history is not preserved, so we can just test it from this. Okay, so we have all the non-Muslim sources right now. We have access to them, and the non-Muslim sources, they corroborate with the Muslim sources. Okay, the Muslim sources say that the son of Khusro killed him and usurped him. Okay, and the non-Muslim sources say the same as well. Okay, and the year is also exactly the same. So it's about, if you are going to check the year, it's about 628 AD when Khusro Pervez was killed by his son. Okay? And Muhammad died 632 AD, so that was about 11 AH, and 628 is going to be about 6 to 7 AH, right? And Muhammad is writing in the Seerah, he's writing the letters to the rulers at the end of 6th year of Hijrah and at the start of 7th year of Hijrah. So it exactly coincides with the time period that is there on in the non-Muslim sources as well. Okay, so this gives us a huge confidence that the history of the Muslims, especially of the early era, the history of the Seerah and the Hadith, they are preserved by the Muslims. They were preserved by the Muslims, and they're still preserved to this day. Okay, and yeah, so this is what happened. Khusro was killed and usurped by his own son, and then a few years afterwards, the Muslims defeated, when Muhammad got to know that Khusro has steered the letter, he also said famously that his kingdom is going to get torn up as well, just like he tore my letter. And what happened was that the Muslims, after a few years, they just destroyed the entire Persian Empire. They took the Persian Empire, and after, let's say, during the time of Umar, about 8 years after this incident, the entire Persian Empire was under the Muslims. Okay? And then several letters were sent to Munzir, the governor of Bahrain, and he accepted Islam. And other leaders other letters were sent to leader of Yamama, Central Arabia, and he said, okay, Musalma was one of the leaders, and they said that, okay, we are going to become Muslims, but how about we share the power with you? Okay, then Muhammad recognized that these people are not accepting Islam because they like the theology, but they are accepting Islam just to get the share of the power. Right? So he refused, and he said that all power belongs to Allah. Okay. And then the ruler of Damascus as well was sent a letter, but then he refused to accept Islam as well. Okay, and there were other letters sent, but we don't have the time to discuss them, so we can just move on. Let's just ask me the question later, right? At the end, okay? Because the response is big, and I'll tell you some juicy details at the end. Now, Umrah Al-Qada. Right? So Umrah, during the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, one of the terms and conditions was that the Muslims are going to return this year, but they're going to perform the Umrah next year. And that is what the Muslims did in the 7th year of Hijrah. There's another message in the chat, so just let me have a look at this one. Okay, so what the Muslims did was that the next year, in the 7th year of Hijrah, in al-Qa'dah, they again set off to perform the Umrah in Makkah. Okay. Now, the Muslim Muhammad prepared all the weapons, and he's taking all the weapons to Makkah. And the treaty of Hudaibiyyah says that the Muslims cannot enter Makkah with weapons. And the Makkans, they are seeing that there are 2,000 Muslims, and they're all armed, and they're coming to Makkah. And they sent an emissary to Muhammad ﷺ, and they asked him that why are you coming with weapons when you agreed that you are not going to bring any weapons? Then Muhammad ﷺ said that I agreed that I'm not going to bring any weapons to Makkah. Okay, so when I'm going to come to Makkah, I'm not going to come with any weapons. So this is what Muhammad ﷺ did. He left a few Sahabi outside Makkah, and they were guarding the weapons, because this is a precautionary measure, right? If they are not with any weapons, and if the Makkans attack them, then it's going to be a suicide in some sense, right? So then Muhammad always used to take precautions, as was a sunnah, and therefore he left a few Sahabi to guard the weapons, and they performed the Umrah, and then they came back, and then the Sahabi who were there to guard the weapons, they went to Makkah and they performed the Umrah, and they came, right? And this is how the Muslims performed the Umrah Al-Qada. And one important incident that happened was that there was a rumor that spread amongst the Makkans that the Muslims have become weak. They went to Medina, and Medina was green, right? Makkah was not green, and Makkah did not have as many diseases as Medina. Okay, so as you know, that in places that are green, they have more water and more agriculture. There are more germs there, so therefore there are more diseases. Whereas the barren places, there are not many diseases there. So Makkah did not have as many diseases as Medina. So rumors spread that Muslims, those who went to Medina, they had become weak because of the diseases in Medina. Okay. So then Muhammad ﷺ, when he heard of those rumors, then he told the Muslims to expose their right shoulders in order to show their muscles. Okay, so they exposed their right. Yeah. So why is that so surprising to you? So if let's say, yes, yeah. So this is the Makkans, right? So they are still hostile to the Muslims. So there has to be some sort of, yes. They thought because of the diseases, there were more diseases in Medina compared to Makkah. So they said that maybe they caught a lot of diseases and they became weak. Then when Muhammad ﷺ, he heard about it, then he asked the Sahaba to expose their right shoulders in order to show the Quraysh that they're not weak. Okay. And then he also told them to raise their voices in Talbiyah. So the Sahaba, as you can see, they are all raising their voices and they have exposed their right shoulders. And the final order that he gave to the Sahaba was that you should walk briskly, right? So almost running. So as you can imagine, a lot of Sahaba, they are running, almost running, walking briskly, and they're saying the talbiyah loudly. Okay. Now the Makkans, they know that yeah, the Sahaba are full of energy and they're not weak. Okay. So this is how you handle all the rumors that were spreading. Okay. And then during this time, during Umrah Al-Qada, then after Muhammad came out of Islam, then Abbas who was the uncle of Muhammad, and he was the brother-in-law of Maimuna bint al-Harith. Okay. Then Maimuna bint al-Harith, Abbas proposed. Abbas proposed on behalf of Maimuna and asked Muhammad to marry her, and Muhammad accepted the proposal, and he married his final wife Maimuna after Umrah Al-Qada, after he came out of the Ihram. And then after Umrah Al-Qada, a few days after Umrah Al-Qada, then three prominent Sahabi, they converted to Islam. Three Sahabi are going to play a major role later in the Seerah as well as in the Muslim Empire later as well. Okay, so one was Amr bin As, and the second was Khalid bin Walid, and the third was Usman bin Talha. Usman bin Talha is not known very well, but he has a very amazing story as well. Okay, so Amr bin As, what happened with him was in the previous session we discussed that when the Muslims, they went to Abyssinia and Najashi, they were presented in the court of Najashi, and Amr bin As was sent by the Makkans in order to bring the Muslims back. Okay, so now he's with the pagans against the Muslims, right? About 10 years ago. Okay, now he goes to Najashi and he tries to negotiate with him to give, tries to negotiate with Najashi to give the Muslims to the Makkans so that he can take them back to Makkah and they can persecute them. Okay, but then he fails, as goes the story. He fails and he comes back, and he's a staunch enemy of Islam at that time. So what happens is that he's thinking in his mind that the Muslims are increasing day by day, and it's only going to be a matter of time before the Muslims are going to conquer Makkah. Okay, so what he does is that he goes to Abyssinia. He migrates to Abyssinia. Okay, now in Abyssinia, amazing thing happens is that Muhammad sends an emissary to Najashi here, that he's sending an emissary to Najashi to accept Islam and also for Jafar to return. Okay, now the name of that emissary is Amr bin Umayyah, right? Now Amr bin Umayyah is sent by Muhammad and Amr bin As, he sees that Amr bin Umayyah is here, right? And he wants revenge against the Muslims. So he goes to Najashi's court and he asks him that if he gives permission to Amr bin As, then he's going to kill Amr bin Umayyah. And Najashi, he didn't knew that Najashi is a Muslim, right? Najashi became furious. And then he tells Amr bin As, how can you reject this man? He has come with a message that is pure, and he's there to do good for you, not to do bad for you. How can you do idolatry when the message is so clear, when the truth is so clear? So Najashi gave dawah to Amr bin As. And when Najashi gave dawah to Amr bin As, then Amr bin As realized, oh, okay, now Najashi is saying, right? So that was the light bulb moment for Amr bin As. And then he said that, okay, now I should accept Islam, go back to Makkah and accept Islam. Okay? And that is how Amr bin As, he decided to accept Islam. Okay? And then Khalid bin Walid, his brother, had already accepted Islam. His brother's name was Al-Walid bin Al-Walid. Okay? So Walid, the son of Walid. He had already accepted Islam, and during Umrah Al-Qada, he left a message for Khalid. And in that message, it was, he wrote a long and emotional message that why don't you accept Islam? Now the truth is clear, right? And now Muhammad also was asking for you during Umrah Al-Qada because Khalid was not present there. So he wrote an emotional message to Khalid bin Walid and asked him to accept Islam. Okay, and then Khalid bin Walid, when he read that letter, then Islam came into his heart, and then he decided to accept Islam. Okay? And before that, also he was planning to migrate somewhere else because the people in Makkah, they know that Makkah is now, the Muslims are increasing in number, and sooner or later Makkah is going to be in the hands of the Muslims. Okay, but then after he read this letter, Khalid bin Walid he recognized previously as well, but that was the watershed moment for him, and he decided to accept Islam. And Usman bin Talha was also another prominent Sahabi. He also decided to accept Islam, and they met each other while they were going to Medina, and they went to Medina, accepted Islam. Okay. And then afterwards, Amr bin As, he was a prominent Sahabi. He conquered Egypt, and later he was a very staunch supporter of what was the name of the son of Abu Sufyan? Why am I forgetting? Muawiyah. Okay, he was a supporter of Muawiyah and the Umayyad Caliphate, and he was a very good politician, a shrewd general as well. Amr bin As. And Khalid bin Walid, as you know, he's the general of the Muslim history, right? So he's one of the greatest generals, if not the greatest generals of all time. And Usman bin Talha, he was given the keys of Kaaba by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so he was the holder of the keys of the Kaaba, and his descendants still hold that symbolic key of the Kaaba to this day. Yep. Now, the final incident that we are going to discuss is the Battle of Mu'tah. And this battle happened because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent his letters and other things that he was sending. He sent one of them to the Ghassanids. Okay, so if you can see here, you have the Persian Empire here, and you have the Roman Empire here, and they have buffer states. Just like in this day and age, the superpowers have buffer states, right? So they have some states that they use, and therefore these Ghassanids and the Lakhmids, they were also the buffer states. Lakhmids were the buffer states of Persia, and the Ghassanids were the buffer states of Rome. Okay, so if they wanted to do anything in Arabia, they would tell Ghassanids to go and do something in Arabia, whereas the Persians, if they wanted to do something here, they would tell the Lakhmids. Now, Muhammad sent a messenger to the Ghassanids, and the messenger's name was Al-Haris bin Umer, and he was killed by the Ghassanids. And Muhammad decided to avenge him. So he sent in Jumada al-Awwal of 8th year of Hijrah, he sent the Muslim army of about 3,000 people to a place called Mu'tah. Now this place, Mu'tah, is in modern day Jordan, right, somewhere here. And Jordan is where Ghassanids were. It is on the edge of Arabian Ghassanids, so this particular place. And the Muslims, the leader of the Muslims at that time was Zayd bin Haris. Okay, so he appointed Zayd bin Haris, who was his adopted son previously, appointed him as the leader. And Muhammad said that if Zayd gets killed, then Jafar takes over and he's the leader. Okay, and then if Jafar gets killed, then Abdullah bin Rawaha takes over and he's the leader. Okay, and then the Sahabas said that never had Muhammad appointed that many leaders in a particular expedition. Now the Muslims go there to Mu'tah in the territory of the Ghassanids, and the Ghassanids, they get to know, before the Muslims come there, they get to know that the Muslims are coming. Okay, and they panic and they send out messengers to all the neighboring tribes and also to the Romans. Okay, so they tell the Romans that the Arabs are coming and therefore you have to help us. So the Romans, they send about 1,000 people under the commander of the brother of Heraclius by the name of Theodore. Okay, so Theodore, under his command, 1,000 Romans, and now the Romans are the elite soldiers, right? They have the best swords, they're the best horses. The Arabs could not compete with them. Okay, and the Romans, about 1,000 Romans, they are there, and about 9,000 Ghassanids are also there. Okay, so about an army of 10,000. In the books of Seerah, it says 100,000 or 200,000, but modern Muslim scholars, they say that it's about 10. It was about 10,000. Right? So 100,000, 200,000 is unrealistic. So it was about 10,000. It's 9,000 of the Ghassanids and 1,000 of the Romans. Now, when the Muslims, they went there, they see an army of 10,000 and there are only 3,000. They were expecting about 4,000 to 5,000 people, and they see 10,000 people. Okay, and then they decide, they start discussing among themselves what to do. Okay, some of the Muslims, they say that, okay, we have already come here in the territory of the Ghassanids, so we should go back. Okay, because they're 10,000 and the Romans are fighting. They physically see the Romans. They were not expecting to fight the Romans. They were expecting to fight the Ghassanids. Okay, now they see the Romans, the elite army. Okay, now they wanted to go back, but then Abdullah bin Rawaha, who was a famous Sahabi, he was also a famous poet. Okay, he was an amazing poet. So he wrote a poetry and he also encouraged the people to fight. And he is Abdullah bin Rawaha. He was one of the Sahabi, was one of the Ansar. And he encouraged the people to fight, and he told them that you came here to become a Shaheed, so why are you shying away from it? Okay. And then the Sahabi, they decided to fight. And in that fight, as we know that Zayd bin Haris was surrounded, he had the flag of the Muslims, and he was surrounded by the soldiers, the Ghassanid and the Roman soldiers, and he was killed, he was martyred during the battle. And then Jafar, he took the flag, and then he did one of the most amazing feats, right, in all of Seerah. And what happened was that Jafar, his one hand was cut off. The hand that he was holding, his right hand, he was holding the flag, his hand was cut off, and then he held the flag with his left hand, and he's fighting. He was surrounded by the Roman soldiers and the Ghassan soldiers, and he's fighting them. Yes, sir. The enemy, hopefully not a Muslim. Yeah, not a Muslim, the enemy, right? So the Ghassanid and the Roman. So the Roman soldiers. So one of the enemy soldiers cut his right hand off, and then he held the flag in his left hand. Okay, and then they cut his left hand off as well. So then what he did was that he was fighting, and what he did, he held the flag on his chest and then tried to balance it on his chest. He did not have both of his hands, tried to balance it on his chest. And then what happened was that one of the Roman soldiers came on his horse, and then he basically sliced him, right? So sliced his entire body. And then later, after the battle was over, then Abdullah bin Umar said that he was there in the expedition as well. So he said that I was present amongst them in that battle, and we searched for Jafar bin Abi Talib and found his body amongst the bodies of the martyred ones, and found over 90 wounds on his body. Okay, so on his body there were about 90 wounds. So he counted each of his wounds in order to tell the people how courageously Jafar has fought in this particular battle. Now Jafar is martyred as well, and Abdullah bin Rawaha, he takes the flag and then he fights, and he is martyred as well. So now the Muslims, they do a retreat, a tactical retreat, okay? And then they discuss amongst themselves what they have to do. Right? So then the eyes fell on the new convert Khalid bin Walid, because he's Khalid bin Walid, he's the expert commander. So Khalid bin Walid initially rejects that, why should I take it? I'm new. Okay, but then they insist, so then he accepts, and then he withdraws to safety. Okay, so how does he do that? We don't know the details. There are some details mentioned in the books, but then we do not know the exact details, right? They're not that authentic. So how does he retreats? How does he withdraw the forces from this particular battlefield? We do not know the exact details, but what we do know is that he retreats. He maybe fools the Romans. Maybe he does something. He fools them that they are going back to their camps. They're doing a feigned retreat, and then he retreats. He retreats fully. Okay? And then the Muslims, they come back to safety in Makkah. Okay? And at that time, when the Battle of Mu'tah is happening, when the battle is happening, Muhammad is in Medina, and Allah is showing him the battle. Okay? And he's seeing the battle, and he's narrating to the Sahaba that this is happening now. Zayd bin Haris is also martyred. Now Jafar is also martyred. Zayd bin Haris was the adopted son of Muhammad, okay? And Jafar was the cousin of Muhammad. Okay? So both of them are martyred, and this was a very sad time, and Muhammad was crying. And he's narrating the entire battle to the Sahaba who were present at that time. And when the Sahaba who participated in this expedition, when they come back, then the other Sahaba, some of them, they started making fun of them. Okay, you guys withdrew from the battle and you came back. But then Muhammad said that they are not the ones who withdrew and came back. Rather, they are the ones who withdrew and they are going to go back. Okay, so, and we know that Theodore, who was the brother of Heraclius, he was also there. He was the leader of the Romans in this particular expedition. And what happened was that in this expedition, the Romans and the Ghassanids, the Muslims managed to tactically withdraw, but the Muslims were not able to achieve the required outcome. Okay. But then later, during the Khilafat of Abu Bakr, when he sent the army to the Romans, Khalid bin Walid was the commander on one side, Theodore was also the commander on the other side, and the battle was the Battle of Ajnadain. We are also covered in the previous in the history sessions as well. And in that Battle of Ajnadain, in which Khalid bin Walid was the leader of the Muslims and Theodore was the leader of the Romans, Muslims just crushed the Romans. Okay, and that led to the conquest of Palestine. Okay. So the revenge was exacted by Khalid bin Walid a few years later during the Caliphate of Abu Bakr. Okay, Jazakallah khair. So this is the end of the session. Any questions?
Many.
Yeah, many. Ask, please.
So can you come back to the previous slide?
Yes.
So when was then the time he went to the records of the Romans? What year? So what was the response of the records?
Yeah, so it is there in the Hadith of Bukhari as well. So what happened was that probably if we string together all of the, because some of the hadiths can be conflicting, so we have to reconcile them, right? So Muhammad when he sent a letter to Heraclius, then Heraclius read the letter and he asked questions to Abu Sufyan, and he decided to investigate himself. Okay, who is this man? Then he sent a spy to Muhammad and he told the spy to ask a few questions to Muhammad. Okay, and then those questions were answered by Muhammad, and then he also asked, because Muhammad had a seal on the back. Okay, he had this outgrowth, and he also asked the messenger to look at this outgrowth, this seal on the back. Okay. And the messenger was not able to look at it. But then when he was going, then Muhammad called him and he said that, okay, look at this and tell this to Heraclius. And then when Heraclius heard about it, and he had in his mind, it was pretty clear that he is the messenger. Then he called his, what is that called? He called the nobles of the, what are the people who are there in the advisors, right? Or the governors, he called all of them, right? He advisors, he called all of them, and he said that, what is the correct word? Ministers, right? He called his minister and he asked them what is their opinion, what is their opinion on Islam, okay? And then they were very scared and they wanted to go away. And then Heraclius said that, okay, I was just testing you guys, okay? It's not my, so he was just seeing how they're going to react if he accepts Islam, right? And they wanted to, they reacted pretty negatively. So then he decided not to accept Islam. Okay? So his kingship for him was more dear to him than accepting the truth. And because he treated the Muslims well, so therefore Muhammad said that his kingdom is going to survive for some time. Okay? Finally, it was defeated, the Roman Empire was defeated by the Muslims. Okay? And I had asked a question when, so we have some time. So can anyone answer when was finally the Roman Empire? When did the Roman Empire came to an end finally? Roman Empire was established, about Julius Caesar, 30 BC, about 30 BC. Yes. So when did it come to an end? It almost came to an end, but then it came back. Good. Good. Any idea? Any guesses? When? 500? Muhammad was born in 570. 500 AH after Hijrah. So, 500. No, even later. Yeah, I've given you a hint. Even later. Yes.
600 something.
I don't know the exact Hijrah year, but it's later than 600. 500 AD. What is AC? That is AD, right? No. Muhammad was born in 570 AD, and the Roman Empire is still there. Right? So how can it collapse in 500? Okay, so. Any guess? There is a restaurant of the Okay. What is the name of that restaurant? So sorry. No, 1840 is too. No, not 1800. Excellent. 1400. Yes. 1453. Yeah, that was the time when Muhammad Fateh. Sorry. Okay. Maybe someone has answered. Anwarullah. So he has access to Google. So Mr. Anwarullah is using his Google knowledge. Oh yes, because of the restaurant. Yeah. Okay, this is because of the restaurant. So it's not because of Anwarullah. That is because to me. Okay. Thanks to me, Anwarullah has answered the question. So 1453. Yeah, 1453, when Mehmed Fateh, the Ottoman Sultan, he went and he conquered Istanbul, Constantinople. That was named Constantinople, and then afterwards it became Istanbul. Okay.
Actually, why was Abu Sufyan there?
To trade with the Romans. Yes.
Wasn't he the leader of
The Quraysh, yeah.
So the leader can
There was no king. The leader meant just an elderly person. So, yeah, the noble person, noble lineage.
You said something during the Umrah.
Yeah.
Or actually when you go, but you said that the Prophet asked for a Khalid.
Yes.
So why would he ask for Khalid?
Because Khalid was not there in Makkah, so he asked specifically where is Khalid. Just to inquire where he is, because he did not, he was not there. So yeah, so that is why he asked for it. And of course, we can assume that Muhammad wanted Khalid to accept Islam. He's such a great general, right? Even before Islam, he did a lot of damage to the Muslims during the Battle of Uhud.
But it's this last session or this session?
There are more sessions.
I'm gonna cover the conquest of Egypt and North Africa.
Egypt and North Africa, that is, we already did it.
Oh, already done.
Yeah, it's already done. That was the history session last year.
Can I ask like one or two questions?